So bluffing, yes, it's a big part of the game, but equally, if not more important, is the ability to sniff out an opponent's bluff. Here's a few tips on things you should focus on. Number one, know your opponents. Before you even play a hand versus an opponent, you should pay close attention to their tendencies and try to figure out if bluffing is something that is part of their arsenal. Watch to see if they make any bluffs, or even if they talk about a hand, try to gauge whether or not your opponent is likely to be a bluffer. Being a poker player is often a little bit like being a profiler. Before you even face the decision against an opponent, you should classify that opponent as either a habitual bluffer, straightforward player, or a player that bluffs sporadically, and that's obviously the toughest one to face. Number two, look for physical tells. Probably the most romantic way to spot a bluff is to look someone in the eye and just sense fear. If your opponent looks nervous, that could be a sign that he's bluffing. The best way to pick up physical tells is to look for anything unusual or uncharacteristic in a person's behavior. For example, if all of a sudden your opponent bets and then, puts his hand over his mouth, something he doesn't do normally, that could be a sign that he's bluffing. Or he could just be self-conscious and, have bad breath. Physical tells are totally an inexact science. Number three, your opponent's mental state. When a player is losing, he is often more likely to steam or go on tilt, meaning that he'll start to get more impatient and bluff more. Always try to be aware of your opponent's mental state. If you think he's steaming, be on the lookout for some more erratic play, which often means hopeless bluff attempts. Other players may start bluffing more when they're bored, actually. What triggers people to get more aggressive generally changes from person to person. For some, if they're winning, it frees them up to try new things. Being ahead in the game might give them that extra boost of confidence. Others will try to use their table image to set up bluffs. If, for example, a player has been playing extremely conservative, he just might be setting up the table so that he'll be able to bluff his opponent since they're never going to see it coming. It's actually a good ploy that works well. So be on the lookout for this type of player, and you won't be fooled when the time comes to pick off a bluff. Number four, situations where your opponent's either going to have the nuts or nothing. You're often going to find yourself in a hand where, based on your opponent's betting, you come to the conclusion that he either has to have the best possible hand or total junk. This is actually a very common situation to be in. Since making a nut hand is so difficult, you should lean towards calling your opponent's bet if your thinking is that he's either got the nuts or nothing, especially if the bet's not too big. Number five, strange betting patterns. This is probably the best and most accurate way to sniff out a bluff. You really need to pay attention to the way your opponent has played past hands in order to make educated decisions in the future. By spotting betting patterns in your opponent, it will be easier for you to spot bets that just don't seem to make much sense in accordance with the way the guy's played in the past. For example, let's say that you've picked up a pattern on your opponent that when they make a flush in the turn, they always slow play and check in the hopes that you're going to bet so they can check raise you. Now a flop comes, king of hearts, 7 of hearts, and a 10. And the turn card's the 5 of hearts. Your opponent check calls the flop, but is now betting on the turn when the third heart hit. Since you've picked up on your opponent's betting pattern, you should be able to rule out the possibility that your opponent has the flush. Unless, of course, he's mixing up his play effectively.